What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Uniform. It is your host, Keon Holmes here, and today we're going to be talking about transferring military skills over into the civilian side. So something that I am very passionate about is basically creating a new life outside of the military once you reach the end of your contract. It is also something that a lot of troops are very afraid of doing, especially those who have only been familiar with the military for 5, 10, 15, even 20 years. So I'm going to basically give you my personal experience because I feel like it would be best for me to walk you through that. Maybe you can take some tips for yourself and apply them to your own life. The first thing that you should do before anything else is create a plan. And I know that sounds very cliche. I thought the same thing when I was told that when I was a young troop, but that is the foundation, your plan. If you have a plan, then you're going to have a very clear understanding of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and when you need to do it. So for me, I signed a 6-year contract, and I'd signed a 6-year because I had planned to do the full 20. But a year into that 6th year, I realized that was not what I was going to do. So I began to formulate my exit plan. And that consisted of me going to school, figuring out what field I want to work in and what do I need to prosper in that field and, getting a good paying job before I exited. So for me, that looked like enrolling in school once my training was completely done. At first, I enrolled into a cybersecurity program, loved it, but it didn't work well with my work schedule. And for those of you guys that are familiar with the military, you know that the military is going to come first. So unfortunately, I had to withdraw from that program. And then I pivoted and I decided to go into English. I had all intentions on being a high school English teacher. But unfortunately, I do not like the way education is being handled in our country right now. Don't like how educators are being treated. Don't like the pay, all those things. So I had to pivot again, despite me being so great in all those courses. My final pivot was communication. I chose communication because it is a lot more diverse than English. However, they share a lot of the same elements. I began to go right back to the first thing I decided to do, which was cybersecurity. Except for cybersecurity is a subcategory of IT. IT is a lot more broad. You have networking, cybersecurity, AI systems, all those things. But I decided to go to IT. IT is a lot more diverse and broad, just like communications. The major would go great with the field, essentially, is what I was getting at. So I decided I was going to go into IT. So I know I needed this education. I know I needed these certifications, and I had a clearance already from Uncle Sam. So going back to what I said originally, I found out what my plan was going to be, education, and then find out how I was going to apply to education. So I had my plan, and I knew how I was going to execute that plan. Once I got my certification, almost done with my degree, I began to search for jobs. I found, different jobs, what skills were they looking for, how can I work on those skills, that way I can become more competitive once I was officially able to enter the job market. For those of you guys that are familiar with the military, more specifically vets or people that are nearing the end of their contract, military members, or I should say Air Force members, are required to do something called TAPS. TAPS is essentially the classes that you do to prepare you for exiting the military. So it teaches you how to build resumes, mock interviews to get your skills where they need to be, teaches you how to apply for jobs, goes over the veteran benefits, all those things. And really, you're just obligated to show up. You're not really obligated to engage. But I engaged. And I really was intentional with my mock interviews. And I was intentional with building my resume. The resume I built in that class was actually the one that I used to apply to my first IT job, which I ended up getting. In that class, make sure that you are engaging to the fullest extent. I went to resume building seminars, all of that stuff. Everything that I was taught in that class, I utilized in the real world, even down to the mock interviews. So, back to what I said, your plan. My plan was to get into IT. Well, how do you get in IT? I need to get my education. I got my education from here, and this is the kind of education I'm getting. I need certifications, so I'm going to make sure I get those certifications. Look at the job market. What kind of skills are you looking for? All right, I have a good year or 2 years left, so I'm going to make sure I get those skills, or I'm close to completing those skills. I need to have something that makes me competitive alongside my skills, military background. That's gonna be my interviewing skills, and make sure my resume is strong. Your resume is basically your ticket in the door. You can have immaculate interviewing skills, but if your resume sucks, they're never going to know that your interviewing skills are great, because they're never going to call you in for an interview. After you nail the interview, and because of your great resume, that's really as simple as it is. For me, I fully expected for it to be some drawn out, I guess, lengthy, complicated process, and it really is not. When you are trying to find employment on the outside of the military, just make sure you remain competitive, which the military already makes you, because we have such unique skills that we're taught in the military. There's also ways for you to figure out how to make the skills and things you learn in the military more civilian friendly, I should say. So I'm in IT, but the job that I did when I was in the military was not related to IT at all. There were some elements of IT in there, but for the most part, I worked on survival gear. The network director that interviewed me would know nothing about what I'm talking about if I just talked about what I did in the military. So I just brought up basic things like my customer support that translated into help desk, or troubleshooting a printer, or reconfiguring the printer settings and stuff like that. All those things, it may have been minor while I was in the military, but it made a big difference once I actually put those things on a resume to apply to an IT job. So if you're someone who's a cook and you want to get into maybe sales or something that is customer support, then sure, you won't talk about you flipping the eggs, but you can more so lean on that customer service role that you played when you were interacting with other troops that came through, or if you ever had to take the CACs and check people out and stuff like that. It'll look different for everyone. So as boring as that may sound, that's what works. It's nothing really elaborate to it. Make sure you have a plan. Once you find out your plan, figure out how to execute that plan. So if you want to land a job outside of the military, you need to plan ahead. What do you want to do? Okay, you know what you want to do. What do you need to do to make sure you can do that? Does that mean certifications or some kind of license? You need the education for it, whatever. That is what you need to be focusing on once you realize that you want to get out of the military, especially if you know you're not going to do the full 20. I hope that helps someone. As boring as it was, that's what I tell all the troops that come to me, and the ones that have listened to me, they have been able to find their way. I'm not trying to sell anyone a dream. I'm just trying to get straight to the point, the way that I wanted it to be done to me whenever I had first enlisted and decided that I didn't want to stay in long term. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Beyond the Uniform. I really enjoyed this episode because it is real life and it really is impactful, and it's something that really helped me get to where I want to be in life. I am your host, Kiana Holmes. Make sure you guys check me out next week. Y'all have a good one.